Some lessons now from a Washington Post focus group involving a key subgroup of American voters. Residents of battleground states who follow along voted for Donald Trump in 2016, but then switched to Joe Biden in 2020. Eureka from Georgia in that focus group saying Trump, quote, was a mess. He was a clown. Lisa from Wisconsin, though, assumed Biden, after beating Trump, would step aside, saying, quote, I kind of felt that he was going to only be a one-term president. All 15 Trump, then Biden voters said they dread the prospect of a 2024 rematch. Still, 9 of those 15 participants said they would unenthusiastically back Biden again. 3 said they would support Trump. 3 vowed to find a third-party candidate instead. Pavel from Philadelphia summing it up this way. We need more choices, fresh faces, fresh ideas, youth. Joining our panel is Scott Clement. He's the polling director at the Washington Post. Thanks for coming in. I'm a geek and a nerd about these things, and I love them. But interesting. So here's my question. If you're Joe Biden, 9 of the 15 would stick with you even though they're not happy you're running again. Is that glass half empty or half full, in the sense of, if you go back to 2020, you take 45,000 votes in Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona and move them around, and Donald Trump could have been reelected. So Biden's winning a majority of them, but is that enough of them?
It's a glass half full, but it's sort of cloudy, and you're not sure what's in it. You know, these are voters that really typify, a particular element of swing. They swung in the direction of the country in 2020 after swinging toward Trump, and they are not very happy with Joe Biden presidency. They're not very happy with the economy. They really reject a lot of positive things that he might be done. They can't name any accomplishments for Joe Biden, but they also know Donald Trump. And when we asked about Donald Trump, the mood did change. The views and the emotions people described were worse. Even one voter who said they would be panicked if Biden were reelected said, well, whatever the level is more than panicked if Trump was reelected. And I think that was pretty much in line with what we saw.
And so Rich Thau, the president of Engageus, the group that did the focus group for you, worked with you on this, describes it this way. For these voters, deciding between Trump and Biden is like being forced to choose either a demolition derby car or an old clunker for a cross-country trip. With either choice, they are not particularly happy. So you could see that and see, well, maybe they don't participate. But these voters said they would turn out, right? That has been, I said this during the break, that has been one of the interesting things for me. I mean, all this polarization, disaffection, turnout has gone up in the last couple cycles. They will vote even if they're not happy?
Well, they certainly did in 2020, and that was, of course, a record turnout year. And some of them were really uncomfortable when pushed who they would vote for. You mentioned Lisa coming to terms, or some others coming to terms that, they would go and they would make a choice, but it wouldn't be a comfortable one. And so that's a layer of unpredictability for these voters. If the election isn't as seen as high stakes as 2020 was, they could be on the fringe.
Focus groups are fascinating. For those of you at home who follow polling, follow focus groups, you can't do any one thing or any one week. You've got to take it over a course of 6 months or a year or more. But it's fascinating when you ask a focus group of important voters like this to do word association. Here was Biden: confused, concerned, worry, sad, sorry, panicked. Jeremy Diamond, you covered the Biden White House. They understand this. They know even Democrats have reservations about the president's age and performance issues. Yeah. The question is, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. They know that it's a challenge. They have tried to address it, and yet this seems to be an impression that is sticking. And sometimes it's very hard when a narrative has set in about a certain candidate or a certain elected official to kind of undo that work. But I think what the White House is betting on, and this has been conversations with campaign officials and folks at the White House, they are betting that the universe of Trump voters looks more like those 9 out of 15 in the focus group than the other 6. And ultimately, they also believe that the more that folks see Trump again, back on the campaign trail, doing his rallies, saying the kinds of outrageous things that he's known to do, that folks will be reminded of the chaos of his presidency and they'll be turned off.
And even before that, we've seen some of Trump, but we're about to see more and more as we get closer. 7 months, I guess, is the Iowa caucuses. We get there. The Trump word association. We just did Biden, Trump, nervous, scared, shocked, sick, horrified. Those are not words that you want associated with the president.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, if you flash back to when it was announced that Joe Biden was going to be the president, what did lots of people in the country do? They took to the streets and they cheered and they banged on drums and pots and pans because they were so relieved that Donald Trump wasn't going to be in the White House anymore. So over these next many, many months, we'll see Donald Trump again. We'll see what comes out of this primary as well. And listen, I mean, if you're Ron DeSantis, you probably like that these are the words that are associated with Donald Trump, and you're going to do your best if you're Ron DeSantis to sort of remind people of the chaos that a lot of people felt during the Trump administration.
And again, we're talking about this in the context of a Trump-Biden
Right.
rematch. In a minute, we'll get to the point that maybe that doesn't happen, but voters seem to think it's going to happen right now. I just want to read focus group. Asked if there was anything that could be done by Trump to win back these voters. One said he needed to learn to take blame. Another said he needed an etiquette class. Another called him a very sloppy person who should get off social media. A fourth person said he needed to grow up. On a scale of 1 to 10, the likelihood of any of that happening from Donald Trump would be what, about 0?
Probably 0 or a -10. No, I mean, this is certainly something that the President Biden is going to be leaning into, which is, look, it's about a choice between him and Trump and whether or not the country wants to go back 4 more years versus trying to make sure that it's not a referendum on his presidency. That's why you see the president lean more and more into these arguments around abortion, around the anti-trans legislation that not just Trump supports, but also DeSantis, and around the book banning that is happening in a number of these Republican-led states, because it's an argument that he can stretch out, the White House and Biden's reelection campaign can stretch out, not to just against Trump, but also to against DeSantis and a number of the other candidates that would potentially run. I just want to add that, like, PBS, NPR, and Marist also have out a poll today, and ours found that 62% of Americans are concerned about President Biden's mental fitness and ability, and the White House is very well aware of that, as Jeremy said. So they're trying to really lean into building back that coalition of college-educated voters and of young voters, which are going to be really key to getting him back into the White House.
So as you're watching this focus group, Scott, and you see people clearly unhappy if that's what they get again, but was there any groundswell of why are they doing this because there's X? Was there a Republican candidate or a Democratic candidate? They were all like, yeah, that would be great, or is that part of the issue, is that they might not want a Trump-Biden rematch, but they're not excited, or at least not collectively excited about anybody else?
Well, they'd love someone to find a new candidate that they like. And that, but when we ask people, has anybody come to mind? Really, there really were not a lot. Michelle Obama was mentioned a couple times, but there weren't any immediate people. And that poses the challenge for both parties, but in finding an alternative, they want to, or for primary voters in doing that, but also for any ideas of a third-party candidacy, is that there aren't obvious options for these voters. So they at this moment, they could be in just a difficult place where they also were in 2020. They weren't all rousing behind Joe Biden. They were upset. They were bothered by Donald Trump.
The pandemic dominated then. Is it the economy now?
Yeah, and the mood in the economy was pretty bad. We've seen poll numbers for a while knowing that people realize the job market numbers are low. They're not that concerned about it. But inflation has dominated. And we asked these groups, what about the record low unemployment numbers? What do you think? They said, well, those aren't the high paying jobs. I can see you can get a lower paying job at $7 or $8 an hour, but they cast doubt on that too. So that's a sort of deep negative mood. It could take a little while, even if the economy improves a lot, for that to change.
A great early baseline on the voting, swing state voters. I urge you to go to the Washington Post website, read the entire piece. Scott, appreciate your coming in.